Wonderful. I think we've got most people here now. So Louise just started the recording. Welcome everyone. Thanks for joining us this afternoon for our live session, which is on personal safety in a public space. I'm currently on day 4 of our virtual wellbeing festival for integrated care in Northamptonshire. In terms of our team today, I'm Becky Salisbury. I'm opening and closing this session, supported by Robert Freud, who you can see on the call. He'll be monitoring the chat and making sure that all the questions are brought forward through to Paul and Tiffany today. In terms of a little bit of housekeeping before we make a start, please do keep your cameras on where possible. Really important to see each other, to engage as part of this live session. You will notice that your mics have been muted at this time. We will turn that off when we get to questions. So please do feel free either to pop any questions that you may have either in the chat or raise your hand as we come to the end of the presentation. For those of you that need it, audio transcription is available by clicking at the 3 dots at the top of your Teams browser. But please do feel free to use the chat as we progress through for any comments, reflections and questions as we go through. So joining us today, we have Tiffany and Paul from Northamptonshire Office of Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. And I'll hand over to them now to talk us through personal safety in public spaces.
Thank you so much for that introduction, and hello everyone. It's fantastic to be here. I'm just going to share my screen. If you just give me a couple of moments to get it up, and we're just going to go through a few slides around our presentation. Right. Okay, so hopefully we can see a reddish screen, so we're good to go. So my name's Paul Golley. I work in the OPFCC. This is the Office of Police, Fire and Crime Commissioner. So for those of you that don't know what that is, my boss, the Commissioner, is an elected official, and he is essentially in charge of the police and fire service, like the budgets, the strategic governance side of things, not necessarily the operational side. So we work to the Commissioner's agenda. We're not politicians. Tiff and I are more community safety specialists. So we work kind of backseat drivers now, aren't we, Tiff, really, to get an awful lot of money externally into Northamptonshire to make it safer. So for example, we've had about £4.2 million now that we've been able to achieve through bid writing and project management to put physical interventions in place to hopefully make the people of Northamptonshire safer. So this is a few pictures of the Commissioner. He's a voice for the people, and he's a publicly elected official, as I just said, and he has loads of things going on. He's a busy man, as you can imagine. We do quite a lot of work with public health as well to prevent drugs and other bits and bobs. So there's obviously quite a strong link with health and violence particularly. So the way I slot in is I worked for Northamptonshire Police for 19 years, mainly in the crime prevention team. I was the crime prevention manager. Tiff, do you want to do a bit of a spiel on yourself quickly before I fire into the main presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. Afternoon, everyone. My name is Tiffany Buchanan. I am the project coordinator for crime reduction. As Paul said, we work together in the Commissioner's office, primarily leading on community safety bids. Prior to the Commissioner's office, I was in the force control room in Northants Police as a training and development officer for 10 years. So we both have that kind of policing background, which is a good transferable skill for our community safety work.
Brilliant. Thank you for that, Tiff. Hopefully everybody can still see that presentation. Is that right, Tiff? Excellent. Brilliant. So I'm just going to get back to where I was. Okay, so today we're going to cover some basic topics around crime prevention and safety advice, what you can do to keep yourself, your family and your co-workers a little bit safer. And then we're going to talk about some of the measures that we've introduced as an office in Northamptonshire, some very specific interventions, and some of which you might be quite familiar with, you might have seen in your travels. And what we're doing as an office, we're kind of pulling the strings behind the scenes and driving the police to make them more efficient and actually put interventions in place where we think there's gaps and maybe areas in Northamptonshire that could be made safer. So you're going to have to bear with me, because with personal safety, some of it comes across so basic, but 95% of it really is common sense. And if you can do things and plan ahead, you can reduce the risk significantly ever becoming a victim. But before I launch into that, I just want to kind of reiterate that whenever we talk about personal safety and crime, it needs to be balanced with what the risk is, and Northamptonshire is proportionately a safe place. The chances of being a victim of anything violence related or robbery is still statistically incredibly low. And Northamptonshire Police are working really effectively at the minute. They have a number of different arms to keeping the people of Northamptonshire safer. So, okay, so for example, if you're going, you've got a night out, or you're thinking about going on your house, one of the simplest things you can do is to simply plan ahead. What is your plan? Where are you going? How are you going to get there? How are you going to get home later on in the evening? You know, are you getting a taxi home? Can you pre-book a taxi? Who are you going with? Can you be safer in numbers? Because if you're in a public place, obviously you're generally quite safe around other people. But if you're walking to that venue, how are you going to get there? If you are on foot, for example, you're not walking down alleyways, make sure you're in well-lit areas where there's CCTV. How much money have you got on you? Enough so you've got to get out of trouble if you've ever had a problem, but not so much money that you could lose it all at once. Try to obviously keep yourself, have good spatial awareness of what's going on around you. So for example, keep your hands free. Don't walk with your hands in your pockets. Try and always look confident as well. A confident person is significantly less likely to be targeted by somebody. Some offenders sadly will target what they perceive as more vulnerable people. So, you know, shoulders back, looking like you know where you're going, and walking with some purpose can actually make quite a difference. And of course, we'll come on to technology in a moment, but there are a range of personal safety apps that you can put on your phone for free that can track you and your friends, if that's the sort of thing that you like. So if you're ever under some sort of duress and you needed to pinpoint your location, that can be done for free by just going onto the Play Store, but I'll come on to more to that in a moment. So as I said, good spatial awareness of your surroundings. I mean, we've just actually spoke to some of your colleagues around, you know, listening to music while you're on a run or when you're going for a walk, you know, and everybody will have their own views on that. But if you do limit your senses, one of your senses, of course, that does put you at a slight disadvantage as to what's going on around you. So, you know, it's a personal choice, but from a personal safety point of view, you know, walking down the street with earphones in does reduce reduce your spatial awareness, and you're less likely to hear what's going on behind you or around you. An awful lot of offenders, when crime happens, it can happen ever so quickly, because the way that offenders tend to commit crime is they catch you off guard ever so quickly, and before you know it, you know, they've snatched the your wallet out of your hand or your phone from your pocket. One of the things that offenders tend to do is they'll use distraction techniques. So that could be something as simple as asking for directions, but it could be something maybe a little bit more more sinister, where they try to panic you. So they tell you that something needs to be done now because there's a problem. Now, of course, we're telling people that 95% of the time plus, we take people at face value. Of course we do. And not everybody's a baddie out there, are they? But if you are ever asked certain things around that, remember to have good spatial awareness about what's going on around you and think, okay, so I've been asked this. It's a little bit out of the ordinary. but I know what's going on behind me, to the left, to the right of me. I've got my phone in my pocket, and you're thinking ahead all the time. Avoid danger spots. So again, really basic stuff, but try not to do the old shortcuts. Stick to the main pathways, and we'll tell you a little bit about alleyways in a moment and some of the work we've done to shut some of these alleyways down. If you do pass danger spots, think about what you would do if you feel threatened. So have a plan. Have a plan. It's always good to think about what you would do if. It's not sometimes a nice thing to think about, but you would feel a little bit more confident to say, well, what would happen if that occurred? How would I respond to that? What would I do? So staying safe on the streets, obviously never accept a lift from strangers. You obviously use licensed taxis. If you can book a taxi ahead of time, that would be a more sensible thing to do. If you do have to walk in the same direction as the traffic, obviously normally you'd walk head on towards traffic, hence as per the highway code. But if you do have to walk in the same direction as traffic and a vehicle pulls up suddenly alongside you, turn and walk or run in the other direction, again, because it's very, very unlikely, but obviously somebody pulling up to you like that could put you at risk. Beware of someone who warns of you the danger of walking alone. So sometimes offenders will try to befriend you by almost trying to reassure you that they're there for your safety, and sadly that could be a ploy. And if you're in any doubt on that, go to the nearest shop, talk to what we call a capable guardian. That's somebody in a uniform. It could be a security guard, a police officer, a BT worker, a fireman, somebody who you've walked into, who you can speak to and you think, I don't feel safe right now. If you think you're being followed, trust your instincts. So for example, if that's happened, cross the road and see if they follow you. If they have followed you twice, then go to the nearest shop, and again, in a public place, tell somebody you just don't feel very safe at the moment, and can you sit in the cafeteria area around other people, so you're being looked at by others. Okay, so just I don't know why dressing appropriately is in the technology safety section, but just one point on this. Of course, in this country, of course you can wear whatever you like. You know, that's one of the things we strongly recommend. And one of the things we've done as an office the last few months is we've shifted not just what victims can do. Historically, that's what we've talked about a lot. What can potential victims do to reduce the risk? We've actually flipped things on its head the last few months, and we're doing an awful lot of things to target the perpetrator and make it more likely that criminal offenders are going to get caught. In terms of dressing appropriately, that's again wearing what you want. But if you've got to go for a long walk, for example, having high heels on might not be a great solution if you can't get away quickly, or if you've not got the right clothes on for the weather. So think ahead, because that can go hand in hand with personal safety, the type of clothing and footwear that you're wearing. Try to keep all your valuables in, try not to keep all your valuables in one place, because obviously if that bag goes and you've got everything in there, your bank card and your cash and your phone, then that could be a real problem for you. So if you have the ability to split money up a little bit, so you've got maybe a bit of emergency fund, maybe in a secret place where it's there for emergencies if you need it. So try and break up your personal belongings if at all possible. And consider carrying a personal attack alarm. So for those of you who aren't familiar with that, just an audible sound will draw attention to you and can actually make a difference between you being attacked. And a lot of people feel safer just by having that on their person. And be extra careful when you're using cash machines. A lot of offenders will basically look over your shoulder surfing, try and get hold of your PIN number, basic stuff that most of us know, but it really is important to do the basic things, putting your hand over the PIN as you're typing in your PIN number, looking around who's around you, and if you don't feel safe using the cash point, if you can go into the bank, even better, or go to another cash point if you don't feel like it's safe. Okay, so what to do if you feel threatened? What we don't want you to do is, we're not asking you to all be karate or kung fu experts here. The best form of defense is literally just to run run to the nearest shop, the nearest place, and you say to the security guard or whoever you can speak to, a capable guardian, that my personal safety, I think it could be at risk. I'm not feeling safe right now. And obviously when you get to that place of safety, you can ring the police. So if that's not possible, because maybe there's a situation where you've been cornered, you don't know how to get out of it, you've got to think on your feet quite quickly. You've got to think of an excuse. So without, maybe you think, oh, I don't want to rile the attacker or the perpetrator. So you kind of find a way to say to them, okay, I just need to, I've got something for you. I've just got to go to my car to get it. And then I'll come back, and then you do a runner. So you try to keep that person calm. You're in control. You don't show your fear or your worry. You take a deep breath and you get out of there as soon as possible. You can stack the odds of success if you kind of ever getting away if under duress by doing some basic common sense things. And as a last resort, an absolute last resort, if you cannot get away, one of the things that I used to say to high-risk domestic abuse victims, particularly when I used to secure their homes, is that in a public space, if you're shouting at someone and they're shouting back, it can look like a domestic incident. And a lot of people in society don't like to get involved. Then it's quite awkward for general bystanders to get involved with. So one of the things that may be appropriate as a last resort, or is appropriate, is shouting fire. Because if you shout fire, it is a way to, people tend to respond to hearing to fire. So you will get noticed if you shout that. But as I said, it is an absolute last resort if there is no other way. So the best form of defense, in essence, is using your legs and running as quickly as you can, not trying to stay to fight if you can at all help it. Okay. So we're going to come on to now to measures that we've put in by the OPFCC to make you safer. And so you don't have to listen to my mundane voice for the next 10 minutes. I'm going to bring Tiff in here, who's actually managed to work on some of these interventions. So Tiff, do you want to go through the Flare app first? Thank you.
Yeah, of course. So the interventions that Paul and I will go through now, we secured funding for a lot of these interventions through the Home Office scheme called the Safer Streets Fund. So we've been able to apply for funding for certain initiatives which make town centres, but also rural areas as well, safer. So the Flare Report app is something we started researching and launched last year. So at the back end of last year, we started talking to a company called Panic Guard, and they have produced this Flare Report app. It is an anonymous reporting app, primarily for violence against women and girls. However, we appreciate that a lot of the incidents that can be reported and not just for women and girls. Anyone can use this app. It's free to download. There's a QR code on your screen at the moment which will take you to the download page. And what happens on the Flare Report app is, in as few as 3 interventions, you can report incidents such as catcalling, being followed, being stared at, those general feelings of unsafety that people might think, I don't want to phone the police about that because I don't feel confident telling them that, or I don't think they're going to necessarily take it seriously. That's really what this app is for and what it's targeting. So those reports, you go onto the app, you'll first select your location. That's done by hotspot mapping that Paul mentioned earlier. So it will select your location from where you are now, or if it's happened kind of previously at a different location, you can select that location as well. It'll then ask you to put in a time frame of when this has happened, and then you can submit the report. So really, really simple, really easy to use. Those reports route directly into a dashboard, which we have access to, but it also goes directly to Northamptonshire Police. Northamptonshire Police monitor this really regularly. So on a daily basis, it will be monitored for any risk, and then on other periodic basis, it will be monitored to monitor those reports, see if there's any patterns of behaviour. So say, for example, we're getting lots of reports on, this is just an example, Northampton Town Centre, Abington Street. If we're getting lots of reports of someone maybe being followed or being stared at or catcalling, we can then tailor the interventions. The police can tailor their interventions. They can increase patrols in that area. They can liaise with the council, look at increased lighting, CCTV, things like that. So from those really simple anonymous reports, we can build a much larger intelligence picture, and help the root cause. So yeah, everyone download Flare Report. It's fantastic. We're really enjoying kind of working with it, and hopefully seeing some really good results.
Brilliant. Thank you so much for that, Tiff. Okay, moving on to the next slide, if it does it. There we go. So just a little bit more on the Flare app. I'll just give you a few seconds just to absorb some of that information that Tiff's pretty much gone through it really. It's a free app. Download it on your phone, iOS or Android, and it's anonymous reporting to capture for the first time ever feelings of unsafety as well as crime. So when it hits the police dashboard, they're building up an intelligence picture of where particularly women and girls are experiencing this unsavory behavior, distasteful behavior that hasn't quite landed as a crime, but it's worrying and it's not acceptable anymore in our society. And that comes back down to us targeting the perpetrators as well as what victims can do to keep themselves safer. Sorry, Tiff.
No, I was just going to say it's worth mentioning with the Flare Report app, please be aware, as it's an anonymous app, if you are wanting a response from the police and you want to discuss the matter to them and make a formal report, please continue to do that through 101 or 999 in an emergency. The reporting app is purely anonymous and for intelligence purposes, just to let you know.
Lovely. Thank you so much for that, Tiff. Okay, the next thing we're going to move on to is El Savvy. This is something that's been driven by the Home Office. This is the Licensing and Security Vulnerability Initiative. So this is about when you go to a pub or a club, you will see in the right-hand side, often on the windows, a 5-star accreditation system. So this is something that we fund. It's a little bit like when you go into your local takeaway and you see a 5-star system for cleanliness. This is for safety and security. It's quite new, but Northamptonshire has been a leader on this for the country. We've got 50 venues signed up for this now. So when you choose a venue to drink in, that venue has worked through a self-assessment criteria that is checked over by the police licensing team, and they are striving for that 5-star award, which essentially says to its clientele, this is a safer venue. The cameras are working. We've got a security policy on drink spiking. We've got everything in place to make that venue as safe as we can for our staff. Okay. Don't know why it's not moving to the next one. Bear with me a second. Okay, now this we've just rolled out the largest ID scan scheme in the country for 10 years to local nightclubs and pubs. So any pub in Northamptonshire, virtually any pub in Northamptonshire open past 1 a.m, which is a little bit late for me because I'm getting old. But if you go to one of these venues, you have to show your ID now, and it is logged on a system, which means if crime occurred at that site, the police have an audit trail to tap into to investigate crime. And I can report that it's already being used successfully by the police to prosecute offenders for violence. And hopefully it provides a massive feeling of safety, and it promotes the venues themselves to self-police. And we are actively encouraging that each venue that has one of our ID scan bits of equipment to actively share the information, which is in line with the GDPR protocols. It's all legit. That if you are essentially banned from one of these venues, we eventually get to a stage one day where you're banned from all of them. So that it's literally just gone in the last few months. So we're hoping that will make a massive difference to making people feel safe in the nighttime economy. Okay, let's move on to some more physical interventions. So over the last 18 months, we've shut 144 alleyways off in Northamptonshire. So a quick example of that is down by the police station in Wellingborough, Victoria Ward. We shut almost 80 alleyways, the largest alley gating scheme that we're aware of in the country. And we've done this because the College of Policing says, the academics, much more intelligent than me, they say if you shut alleyways off, it can reduce crime by 43%. And I'm pleased to report through Safer Streets 1, where we have put those 80 alleyways, 80 alley gates in, we have seen a massive reduction in crime in that identified area with minimal displacement. So in essence, we think alley gating works. It's such a basic thing to do, but it's actually quite hard to achieve with legalities and planning and other bits and bobs that hoops we've had to jump through. But when it's done, it's fantastic, and it reduces fly tipping, it reduces violence, it reduces burglary, it reduces antisocial behaviour, criminal damage, and the police are really in favour of it as well because it keeps most offenders on the main streets. So if the police are called, we've got the alley gates in areas where we've extended the monitored CCTV as well as securing the homes. So we've tried to do everything together to make areas disproportionately affected by crime in Northamptonshire even safer. So we are looking at as many alleyways as we reasonably can. Where we can justify it and we can work through the right protocols, we will try to shut alleyways off in a bid to make the public safer. So here's an example here. We've just closed this one. This is opposite Bridge Street in Northampton. This was causing us a lot of problems and making particularly women and girls unsafe. So this is an alleyway known as Francis Jetty. We've just got it closed off, which means we keep the main footfall on the streets past what we call the snowvan, which I'll come on to in a minute, the help points, the monitored CCTV, and of course they're well-lit streets. So it enables us to police the area more effectively and reduce the likelihood of people becoming victims of crime. Now, taxi, do you want to talk about this one, Tiff? This was your baby, this one.
Yeah, absolutely. So we have recently signed off a project in the last couple of weeks for a training package for all taxi and private hire vehicle drivers. So like it says on the screen, it's bespoke training package that's been created for us. And this will deliver awareness around drink spiking, sexual abuse and domestic abuse. And there's 3 training videos that all drivers will be able to watch. So they'll be able to safeguard their passengers better, recognise vulnerability and also teach standards of behaviour as well. There's a knowledge check alongside these videos and taxi drivers will be given a sticker for their window to say that they have completed the training. It will take some time to bed in, but it will be part of licence conditions for taxi and private hire drivers. So it will form part of their conditions when they're renewing and applying for new licences. So yeah, that like it's very recent, so it'll be rolled out from now onwards. And then the lighting as well. So we've also improved the lighting at the taxi ranks in Northampton Town Centre. So Mercer's Row, George Row, the Drapery. There's better and kind of enhanced and upgraded lighting at those taxi ranks now, making them safer. And also on the Bouverie estate, which is just off of Wellingborough Road, behind kind of the old house pub and the housing estate there. That was a really frequently used area to exit and enter the nighttime economy. So we often found quite a lot of displacement of crime and antisocial behaviour coming out of the nighttime economy and occurring in this housing estate that was quite dark, quite sheltered, lots of shrubbery, making it easy for people to become victims in that area. So we've done a lot of lighting improvements and also cutting back trees and shrubbery to make the surveillance better in the area as well.
Lovely. Thanks so much for that, Tiff. Okay. So some of you in Northampton may have seen these flags on Guildhall Road. This is known as the safer route. We've set this up mainly because it connects the students of Northampton University to the nighttime economy. So this essentially is a route that anyone, particularly students, can follow into the town centre. It's marked out, floor markings and flags along the street, and it's got extra attention into the St John's monitoring station to manage it, and it's also policed partly by the university as well, as they chaperone university students up into the town centre. So this is just something kind of you to be aware of, that this is how we're thinking really. What particular areas do we need to put a heightened level of security and safety into place? And this is just one example where we've done that. And in other areas of Northampton and Northamptonshire, we've tried to think about physical interventions. So let me give you an example of that. This is we talk about the race course in Northampton. Historically high levels of violence, unacceptable, way over the benchmark, and sadly some horrible cases. It had to stop. We needed to do more to keep the race course safer. So we've installed 4 help points on there, and you'll see them particularly at night time because they emit a blue light, very, very bright. You can see it miles away. You can hit that help point, a camera will come down, and it's St John's monitoring station will talk to you, and they have a trigger plan with the police who will hit the ground running if you are in immediate danger. So we put 4 on the race course, 2 along the safer route, and we've got 2 in the town centre itself. And here's an example of where the help points are. So in blue, you can see where we've put them. And then the red stars is where we've just put £176,000 investment into CCTV. So that's all monitored there. We have fantastic line of sight across that park. It is an immense space, but we've got pretty good coverage along there with high quality night vision cameras that are all monitored. And here are help points in the town centre. So at the bottom of the screen is Beckett's Park. That is the start of the safer route from the university into the town centre. And you can see we've got one at the top of Abington Street and one on Gold Street as well. And we have had genuine cases where they've been activated, and police have responded to keep people safe. So the other thing we've done as an office is we put about 130 new cameras in now, Tiff, through Safer Streets funding. So this is above and beyond the existing council offer. So areas disproportionately affected by crime, we're putting more monitored cameras in to make residents safer. So this is Wellingborough, for example. All the town centre system was entirely digitalised. It was an analog system up until 2 years ago. It's been completely brought up to a new standard. And then we've extended it onto that Victoria ward, which is earlier on where we talked about where we shut some of those alleyways. So we have better line of sight, and we've seen huge reductions in crime in this area, thanks to some of the physical interventions. And we have presented that to the Home Office, who are really, really pleased with some of this work. Tiff, do you want to talk about Shout Up?
Yes, absolutely. So we have been working over the last couple of years, Safer Streets Round 4, which is the fund that we are currently working on, and previous round as well. We've worked with Northamptonshire Rape Crisis, who have trained staff at 18 venues countywide, so across all the 4 main towns. They've trained their staff in venues to recognise sexual abuse and vulnerability. So similar to the taxi driver package in a way, it's recognising that behaviour and knowing how to act upon it. And this training then certifies venues as sexual harassment free zones. So like El Savvy as well, it gives that accreditation to make the venues feel more confident in challenging this type of behaviour, but also for customers as well, to help them feel safer. And then the It Only Takes One campaign has been an internal campaign through the Commissioner's Office, and it's a multi-layered campaign aiming to raise awareness for safety for women on a night out, the impact of harassment and inappropriate behaviour, and again giving that bystanders that knowledge and that confidence to recognise unacceptable behaviour. So you may have seen some of these posters across the town and across venues, encouraging that, and we've got a number of try signs going in across the town centre as well, with this messaging and these reminders for people to feel confident with it.
Excellent, thank you for that, Tiff. And just to kind of add to that, really, this goes back to the OPFCC helping to drive a cultural change of attitudes and behaviours, particularly towards women, and stamping out this behaviour. The message to offenders is, you know, it's got to stop. You know, you can't keep harassing women, inappropriate behaviour, touching, and all the other things, catcalling, all the other things that go on. And then, of course, the bystanders to do their bit. It's an awkward topic, but we need bystanders to safely intervene. And that's what the Shout Up Project training helps deliver, particularly for the workplace staff, with the wider campaign from It Only Takes One that says, you know, you'll go on the website and you'll see it for yourself. It takes one person to intervene to make a terrible incident, stop a terrible incident from happening, or just making us aware of what's going on. Okay. Right, we're almost there. Now, I'm going to talk to you about the snow van. I'll go on to this slide first because I'll show you, this is a visual image of what the van is. So, some of you may have seen this. On a Friday and Saturday night in Northampton, we put a bright pink van in the middle of the town centre on All Saints Plaza, which is at the top of Bridge Street and the top of and end of Gold Street. It's strategically placed, so we've got good line of sight, and it's essentially a help point that the OPFCC fund to make people feel safer. One of the reasons why we've done this is a few years ago now, a young lady named India Chipchase was murdered in Northampton after a night out. Horrific, and we need to make sure that never happens again. So part of our work around keeping women safer, Tiff and I have written 3 bids now, and we've been able to accrue £1.2 million for interventions to make women safer in our nighttime economies. And this has captured the imagination of almost nationally. We are getting countless inquiries from other forces now who all want to have a help point like this. And we essentially run it by Northampton Guardians, who are a charitable organisation. They utilise our snow van asset to drive crime prevention, be someone to talk to in a vulnerable person's time of need, think they've had their drink spiked, fallen out with their boyfriend, whatever it is, need to charge their phone. That van is there and it is fully equipped with everything needed to keep somebody safe. 80% of it is just about being there and listening to people. But the van is geared up. It's got first aid kit. We've got mechanisms to get vulnerable people home where there is no other way. And we think this is keeping massive demand off the emergency services. I haven't got the stats to prove it yet, but I think it's had a big difference on keeping demand off the NHS as well, because we're killing people with kindness. We're going in there, we're talking to people very early on before things escalate and the violence occurs. So on your travels, if you're just inquisitive, you want to understand it, come and visit the snow van in Northampton. And then also, if you are on the nighttime economy and you need the asset, you know, the Guardians are there, they're patrolling, and it's there every Friday and Saturday night. We're so pleased with this, we're putting another van into Kettering, and that van that you can see on your screen is what the van is going to look like in Kettering. We've wrapped the van, it's at headquarters, and it's good to go to be deployed in the next 4 to 6 weeks. So you will see that in Kettering nighttime economy very, very soon. So I appreciate all the words on the screen's a lot to take in, but if you want to know more about the snow van, we can circulate some slides to the group afterwards. We've got leaflets, hard copies, and there's information on our website as well. So the snow van stands for Safer Nights Out Van, funded by the OPFCC, and it's ran by a voluntary group. We don't obviously pay anybody for their time. People go out with the kindness of their hearts to keep other people safe, and it works, I must say, incredibly well. And in summary, that's pretty much come to an end now. But what to do if? I thought the best way to end this is to explain that if you were ever in danger, is simple. If in immediate danger, 999, you ring the police, you tell them your personal danger is at imminent risk, you believe it to be imminently at risk, or something is happening. For anything else, it's 101. And if you're in Northamptonshire, you'll have the option to click Northants. If you're on the border, it will go through the other options, and hopefully that's been really useful to you all. But if you've got any questions, please put your hand up and we'll do our best to answer. Thanks for your time.
Brilliant. Thank you, Paul and Tiffany. Really helpful overview and an absolute wealth of information that we've heard this afternoon, not only in terms of sort of proactive steps, I guess, that individuals can take, but actually a lot of the preventative measures that you've supported across the county. I've certainly learnt a few things today. I will come to Robert in just a moment, but I suppose before we do, I suppose I've got one question myself, which is really about how some of this is sort of being publicised sort of amongst sort of the general population of Northamptonshire. It certainly sounds like there's like I say, a whole wealth of sort of preventative measures that have been put in place.
Yeah, absolutely. We have our own media and comms team, and some of it goes out through the OPSCC. If you click on the news section of our website, this stuff is being published all the time. Some of the things I've mentioned are quite new. They haven't gone out yet because they're taking time to bed in before we publicise it. Other things have hit the force and they advertise, and occasionally the media and the wider media and television will pick up on some of the things that we've done. But if anybody needs any more information about the work that we're doing, we're more happy to share anything on.
Brilliant. No, that's really helpful. And obviously the session's been recorded as well. So if people want to kind of refer back to information or use the QR code, particularly for the flare up and things, there's an opportunity for people to revisit that kind of after the live session today. Robert, did you want to just pick up a couple of questions? I can see a couple popping through in the chat.
Yeah, that's fine. I'll just go through those. While I'm doing that, there was one question that I wanted to ask as well, and that was around what is being done to educate the younger people, at schools and that in regards to personal safety and transition to adulthood.
Yeah, absolutely. So with this project that we've been working on recently through Safer Streets Round 4, we have worked closely with the college, Northampton College. We funded what's called Stand By Her training for them. So that was misogyny-based training, kind of tackling it at the very early stages. So teaching the male students standards of behaviour, what to look out for when they're going on nights out. That was delivered to the trainers and the teachers at the college, and they have then created their own training package, which has offered a lot more longevity to the training, so they can now deliver that to new and existing students. And we've had quite a lot of interest in that, actually, in terms of the younger people. Particularly this bid is primarily nighttime economy. So with age groups, we target that age group that are already in the nighttime economy or who are about to use the nighttime economy. So yeah, that's the work we've done with the younger population at the moment.
Okay, brilliant, thank you. I'm just going to go through the questions because one's just come through, which is very much links to the younger people, and it's how would you advise encouraging younger people to keep safe and follow this advice, especially when it may seem uncool advice?
Yeah, it's a tricky one, isn't it? You go for
that. Well, crime prevention is a dry topic. There's no doubt about that. One of the things we're doing is we're investing in virtual reality technology. We've got a plan on that now. We've already got kit with the university, and they are developing community safety packages for us. So we know if we're going to get the young people on board, we need to invest in the tech, because PowerPoint to the younger generation don't cut the mustard anymore. Their retention rate their minds have moved on. So technology is an area of one of the ways we're going to get our messages across. We haven't got that into schools yet. That is something we're looking at. We are just about to look at investing virtual reality, supplying it to the force and fire initially, and for road safety, and that will eventually be followed by equipping the police force. And we think that will be one of the ways that we can get a hook into better educating and supporting younger people. I think it's a tough one, to be honest. I can't fully answer your question, but hopefully that will give you some as a start of a 10 that the difficulty we've got with crime prevention is it's often a reactionary thing when something happens. That's really difficult for us to get our messages across, especially within the school curriculum as well, with the other things that the school has to do. It's quite hard for us to get a foot in the door, I must admit. But we do think that technology has a part to play in driving the messages across.
Brilliant, thank you. And I think, like I say, yeah, the technology is going to be that hook, isn't it, really, to drive that forward. And I was even reflecting myself when listening to the content earlier, where it's around, you know, just even the alleyways and stuff. You think when you're with your children, and I'm guilty of this, that we've took a shortcut and you go through the alleyways, it's then like, well, actually, what's that telling my child, that actually it's okay to do that? So if they're not with me, they may think, yes, I'll go and do that walk through there. So
Yeah, I completely agree, Robert. I think we all like shortcuts, and that literally is a shortcut metaphorically as well. It's yeah, I think you're quite right. I think as adults, we all have a duty of care to make sure that we teach our children the rights and wrongs as well. You know, everybody likes convenience. We know that, and we know by closing alleyways it can make people walk a little bit further. We are talking seconds. We're not shutting every single alleyway in Northamptonshire. It's balanced with legitimate access and need against a risk. So, for example, Victoria Ward, Wellingborough, we haven't shut every single alleyway off. We've shut them vertically around the back of the homes, and then retained vertical access where we know we've got cameras nearby, so we can see people come in and out of those alleyways. There has to be a balance in that with crime prevention security, and we try to do that as best as we can.
Yeah, thank you. So we have got one question as well. What's the main piece of advice that you would give to young people starting to go out on nights out?
Okay, brilliant. Well, I think the first thing for me is get familiar with the Snow Van. Second is download the Flare app. These are 3 things that people can do. The third thing is, again, going back to the basics, have a plan, think ahead. Please, I'm going to sound like a real old man now, but please don't drink too much if you can help it. We've all been young once. I was never a saint myself, but you know, you've got to try and stay in control. You stay in control as best as you can. That's what I say to my daughter. She's not quite there yet, but you know, I think understanding how you're going to get home, where you're going to be at the end of the night, because the start of the night looks very different to what it ends up as, and it can only be your friends have gone off with some other friends, your phone's run out of charge. It doesn't take a lot to be in a place you didn't think you were going to be 5 hours ago.
Yeah. Perfect, brilliant. And then Louise has just reflected that, yeah, stay together. My friends and I would never let anyone leave the pub alone.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And I must say, as I volunteer on the Snow Van myself, not too often because the nights kill me, but the biggest thing I see still is, whilst we see some really good behaviour from young ladies, the later the night goes on, you see girls on their own. They've got detached from their friends, and you're still seeing this basics not being done. I think alcohol has a part to play, of course it does, but it really is, if we can reiterate those basic messages to particularly younger people, and of course ourselves, we can hugely reduce the risk of anything happening, any sort of violence.
Brilliant, thank you. I think that's it, Becky, because the other question which Dave had put in was around how is this getting taught in schools, which we've covered. So no, thank you, it's been really informative. So I'm going to hand back to Becky.
Brilliant, thanks Robert. Yeah, absolutely, a really helpful overview, an awful lot for us to take in, not only now but also sort of after the session as I reach for my phone to get the Flare up myself. So thank you to Paul and to Tiffany for joining us today, and for the wider festival team in terms of the support for making this session happen. That leads us now into feedback. As we all know, feedback is a gift. Really keen to hear people's views and thoughts on the session. There's a QR code or a link in the chat now. Really appreciate if people could take the time just to fill that in. There are more resources and activities available on the Wellbeing Festival website, which is wellbeingfestival.live. Equally, we'd also welcome people to sort of comment, shout about on social media. about the festival, and I think there'll be a hashtag, there we go, popped up on screen, hashtag VWBF23. Please do use that if you are mentioning this in your social media posts. As with many topics on our Wellbeing Festival, is a really important reminder, if you have been affected by any of the content of this session, please do reach out. There's a number of numbers on screen now, which you are very welcome to use, or through within your organisations. Obviously, please do seek some support if you need it. Finally, a thank you really for joining us today and for making a difference. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for having us.
Thank you. Take care.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.